You know, niggas gotta get their priorities together. Got their mind on the wrong things, spending their money in the wrong way.
Trapaholics, real trap shit.
Say you need that car with the rims and a charm, just like Jim. It's more than life. Yeah.
I'm telling you. Talk to him.
Say you need that LV bag
For what?
with the belt and the hat.
That's all you got though.
It's more than life. Yeah.
Talk to him. Real.
Say you wanna turn up at the club,
Why?
buy some bottles, impress them girls.
what?
It's more than life.
Oh, fucking everybody.
Yeah.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And who dat? And I'm Ethan. And I guess really this is the game that's really bothered me the most this season. This one's the one that has really put that bad feeling in my stomach. Really, the first one that's really kept me up at night. I think I said it before about one of these games. Maybe I said that about the Panthers game, but really, this is the one that bothered me the most because we had it. We led the entire time. We led for the entire game until like the last 2 minutes. I think this game has bothered me the most since probably the playoff loss in the 2020-2021 season against the Buccaneers. But man, it's just upsetting. But let's get into this. There's quite a bit of annoyances to get into. So can I get a menu? And let's get into that. Let's get into just kind of how the game kind of started out here. And really, I was really surprised how the game kind of started out because I thought just right from the get-go that the Bengals were just kind of dominate on offense and march up and down the field, and it wasn't going to be competitive at all for the Saints on offense or defense. But surprisingly, the first couple drives, the Saints were getting a lot of pressure on Joe Burrow, and that first drive they ended it. I think it did go 3 and out, or maybe they got a first down and then they got him off the field with a Demario Davis sack. And I was really surprised by that. And even before they got the sack, it seemed like they were collapsing the pocket and really making him uncomfortable, made him throw an incomplete pass to set it up to where they could get that get that sack, and then the Saints, they get the ball back and they pretty much do the same thing. They don't look any better on their first drive either. But then they punt it away, and heck, they actually make maybe one of their first good plays on special teams all year and force a fumble and set themselves up around the 30-yard line. And heck, one of the first plays you see from Taysom Hill is him throwing the ball. So it looks like they're maybe trying to mix it up from him a little bit. And I was so hard on Traquan Smith in last week's podcast, and hell, that's who ends up catching the first touchdown of the game. And that's like the first touchdown, first lead that the Saints have had like almost all year. And I was just so surprised that they were gonna have a lead that early in the game, and then it just seemed like everything kind of changed on the next drive that the Bengals got the ball back, and they just seemed to kind of march down the field, and once that Demario Davis roughing the passer uh, call happened, it was questionable, definitely questionable. But it seems like anytime you see what looks like just a hard, rough hit on the quarterback, anything that looks disturbing to anyone now, I think that's just the kind of world we live in. People are just kind of soft in general. So if it looks vicious, I think the refs are just going to throw the flag. They don't want superstars like Joe Burrow getting hurt. So of course they're going to throw the flag on anything that looks nasty. Uh, I don't want to say it was dirty because it wasn't, but if it looks dirty, they're going to throw the flag. And I think that just kind of took the edge off the defense. That just kind of took the edge off. And then, of course, that gave them an easy 15 yards, and that just made it easier for them on that drive. And of course, they got that little weak, soft little underneath throw to Joe Mixon, and at the goal line, Mario Davis kind of pulling his own version of Marcus Williams, throwing himself at Joe Mixon instead of wrapping up at the goal line where he could have stopped him on third down, and he scores the touchdown there. And it just seemed like everything changed from there on out. And then the Saints go on their next drive, and seems like they were going to add to their lead there, which they did. They got a field goal there, and then actually got a stop. And then the next drive after that, I think it was about their fifth drive there, kind of towards the end of the first quarter there. This was the drive where the Saints really should have really added to their lead more than this. Kind of was where it started adding up to where all they were doing was kicking field goals. But I think this is where the injuries started adding up, and that was Adam Troutman and Andreas Pete started getting hurt, and they had I think they had like a big run from either Alvin Kamara. I think it was a big run from Alvin Kamara up the sidelines, and then right after that there was a big run. Let me see how long it was. They had a big run from Taysom Hill, a 31-yard run from Taysom Hill, and then I think they had the Bengals on the ropes there. I think they had the Bengals on the ropes there, and then I think all the momentum got killed there when Adam Troutman was in motion there, and it was so weird. I think he had gotten hurt on the run by Taysom Hill, and I think he was trying to tough it out, and then he just went down oddly, and then there was a big delay of the game there, a timeout, and walking off, and I think that allowed the Bengals to really recombobulate, catch their bearings. I think if that didn't happen there, I think the Saints were going to score a touchdown there, and instead of having to settle for a field goal, and I think that really stole the momentum away from the Saints, and I think that really messed things up for them. I think also Adam Troutman having to come out there took away one of their best blockers in the game as well. So I think that just messed everything up for them as well there. And really, after that, here's a stat for you as well. Taysom Hill only had 5 carries for 39 yards. So he had pretty much all of his rushing yards just from that one run. So that's kind of odd as well. So I don't know. I think injuries killed a lot of their momentum, because also Andreas Pete went out in the second half as well. So they loved to run on that left side behind Andreas Pete, because a lot of people give Andreas Pete a lot of heck for not being a great pass blocker, but he's a hog molly. He's a dancing bear when it comes to blocking in the run game. But when you lose 2 of your best blockers in the run game, and Adam Troutman and Andreas Pete, it starts to show up. But another injury I don't think people may have noticed, but I think he was low-key injured. I think Taysom Hill may have actually been injured. I think maybe attributed to why he didn't get more carries. And I think he may have gotten hurt actually somewhere in the third quarter on that play where he ran to the left and he was looking to his left to try to maybe cut inside, and when he got blown up by Eli Apple, because really after that run there, he, I can't remember really, but I don't think you really saw, I don't know if he ever ran the ball really ever again after that play. So I think he may have gotten shook up after that play, or something may have happened there, because I think maybe you maybe saw him one or two more times after that, but the one or two more times you saw him after that, he was actually throwing the ball. He had that one play where he did the play action pass there to Alvin Kamara, and he threw it, and they said it wasn't pass interference because the ball wasn't in the air when it happened, which was that was garbage because it was. That was like almost like identical to the no call in the Rams game, knocking him down while the ball was in the air, and that would have set up like first and goal. And that was another drive that just ended in a field goal. But and also like just things where you didn't see players that were like effective and and like really were contributors in this game was Rashid Shaheed. That when I seen him take off for that jet sweep, man, he was just gone. That was like one of the most explosive plays I've seen in this game, and that was odd that you never saw anything out of him after the one play where he beat Eli Apple. He had him burned, and I guess I don't know if that was on him for taking it to the inside and Andy Dalton throwing it to the outside, or if that was on Andy Dalton. But those were like only two wrinkles of the game that you saw him in. But man, there was just so many missed opportunities in this game. Like if you have five chances in the red zone, you have to you have to take advantage of them. Man, this game just was so frustrating. Like I think back to all the times that they should have just done more with their opportunities in the red zone. Uh, and there was times where they would like get in like third and four or third and two situations, and they would decide to throw it instead of run it, even though I just mentioned that Adam Troutman and Andres Pete were out of the game, so maybe that made them not feel quite as comfortable in the run game. But honestly, they would throw it instead, and it would end up being incomplete or something like that. But hell, honestly, I would have preferred them to run it instead in those situations. And then if they would have gotten like third and one or something, or third and inches, then sneak it or something, but they didn't. And that goes right back to when they were trying to run the clock out after like the 2 minute warning there, because it was third and four at that point in the game. Like I honestly would have preferred them to just run the ball at that point and at least run some more clock or something instead of throwing it, because Andy Dalton hadn't really been great at all in this game, because he was 17 for 32 for 115 yards in this game with a 29.3 QBR and a 77.9 quarterback rating. Like that really isn't great. Like he did convert like quite a few. He did convert like a lot of third downs. I'll give him that. I think he converted like double digit third downs in this game. So like more than half of his completions were third down completions. But honestly, in that situations when they're trying to run out the clock and they had like 200 plus rushing yards, I honestly would have preferred them to just run the ball. And if they would have ended up getting in like a third and one, third and inches, or fourth and one, fourth and inches, just run the ball again, because that was like one of the most comical things I've ever seen. Like that you couldn't draw up a better way to choke away a game than what they did there at the end of the game. You go 3 and out. You have a punt that only goes like 15 yards. You completely shank the punt, and then on the first play, a pass goes for 60 yards to Jamar Chase for a touchdown. Like that's like the worst three things that can happen in a game, to just choke it away when you lead for the entire game. Like it's just that's just completely comical. It's like the worst thing I've ever seen. But I guess I'm going to move on to like the defense now, because that they were just bad, like bad, because just the constant like missed tackles. Like I I thought like I thought they were going to be bad, like and maybe like giving up like some big plays and stuff like that. But that's not really what they did until, of course, the end of the game. But what they were getting killed on were like short, like little passes. Like Joe Burrow would come up and kind of hold on to it for just like a little second, like maybe he was going to hand it off, and then he would get like do like quick like little dump off passes. And man, like every defender that was there would always miss like the first tackle. A lot of that was Chris Harris, which I understand that, because he's pretty much he's washed as far as I'm concerned. I don't think he should be on the team, just because he was missing like pretty much every tackle. And same with Bradley Roby, which I'm really surprised by that. Bradley Roby has been solid over the what I guess the since he's been here, and he was awful. He was awful, just missing tackles, and that they would get plays like screens in the backfield and runs in the backfield, and just hands tackle. And I mentioned Mario Davis on the Joe Mixon touchdown, just everything. Trying like these shoestring tackles instead of trying to wrap up. Like it was terrible, and they would always get them. What made it easy on the Bengals offense is that every like third down situation was like always like a 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2. They could never seem to really get them in any kind of third and long situations, but it's just always third and manageable. Like and all never the first guy to get there would ever get them on the ground. It was just horrible. It was painful to watch them every time go on these like 15 play drives, and they weren't like long sustainable drives like New Orleans. They would just march down there and just score a touchdown like every time. And you just if you know anything about football, you can't trade field goals for touchdowns. And it was just and that's exactly what happened. It came back to bite them in the end, even though it seemed like for the most part they had control of the game up until the very last second. And that's what bothered me most about this game, because even though this was a game that I pretty much knew that the Saints shouldn't have had any chance at, the false hope that it gave me is what killed me the most, because they should have won. But it's just so annoying knowing that this defense was supposed to be like the trademark of this team, but the last 3 weeks or so they've been the most disappointing part of this team. Like honestly, if this defense was playing like it did last year, and the offense has been as good as it has been the last 2 weeks, they would have been 3-0 the last 3 weeks. They would have beat the Vikings. They luckily did beat Seattle, and they would have won this game as well. Honestly, if they kind of choked away the game against the Panthers as well, giving up that big play to Laviscus Chenault when they were close close made the lead closer, and then right after they had scored their touchdown and shortened the lead, then gave up a big play to him like right away. So the defense, after that game against Carolina, I was already whispering that the defense is low key trash, and it's weird how it's slowly gotten worse and worse and worse and worse every week. It's just odd, and really they're overall they're pretty healthy. Honestly, the only player that they were missing yesterday was Marshawn Lattimore. I understand that you're missing Alontae Taylor and PJ Williams, but those guys aren't really starters. But I think we need to point out that guys like Tyrann Mathieu has been pretty much awful. Marcus May, he's just coming back from injury, but he's missed a lot of games. So it's hard to judge what he is because we haven't really seen him very much. But this kind of leads in to something that I was talking about after the C.J. Gardner Johnson trade, and this is a name that we all know too well, and this is Jarius Byrd, and I mentioned that as this whole transaction between losing Malcolm Jenkins. We understand that he retired, so it's not like they let him go in free agency or anything. And just the whole changeover in the secondary. But we know they decided to let Marcus Williams go because they didn't want to pay him, but they brought in Marcus May instead. And then they traded C.J. Gardner Johnson to the Eagles for pretty much nothing because, once again, they didn't want to pay him. So they brought in Tyrann Mathieu, but they had already brought him in. So they kind of just doubled up by letting Marcus Williams go. So they brought in Tyrann Mathieu and Marcus May instead. And honestly, looks like that's just like the Jarius Byrd situation where they let Malcolm Jenkins go to the Eagles, just like C.J. Gardner Johnson traded to the Eagles, and they let Roman Harper go to the Carolina. It's looking almost identical to that situation. And I mentioned that after the C.J. Gardner Johnson trade to the Eagles. And it was even more of a slap in the face last night during the Cowboys Eagles game when C.J. Gardner Johnson had 2 interceptions, and one of the interception was basically to seal the game against the Cowboys. And the Eagles are 6-0, and C.J. Gardner Johnson has 3 interceptions, which the Saints have 1 on the entire season. I think the Eagles have like 7 or 8 on the entire season. The Saints are looking ridiculous from that trade. That's just I'm having flashbacks here, and also the heart back on the defense. I want to talk about their heart. They don't look like they have any heart or energy, and that's part of trading away C.J. Gardner Johnson. He was an energy and a juice guy, and a lot of people were talking about another energy and juice guy that they lost, and they said, "Oh well, we don't need him because you know who's better? Pete Warner." Which Pete Warner has been great. He has been great. He leads. I don't know if he still does, but there for a while he led the league in solo tackles. But you know what he doesn't really bring? He doesn't bring the energy and the juice and the DAP game and that fire. And you know how we lost that? Who brought that? Quan Alexander. And you know what team he's on? the Jets, and you know what their record is? They're 4-2. So it's comical. I would definitely trade. I would definitely trade away Marcus May, uh, Jarvis Landry, Tyrann Matthews for all those guys. I would trade all those guys away. I would give the picks back for C.J. Gardner Johnson, uh, Marcus Williams, and Quan Alexander. I would take all that back. Like I said before, all the way back to that podcast, doing all that was malpractice. It was comical. That just it looks like it's already blowing up in their face. I just I just don't. It's it's painful that seeing C.J. Gardner Johnson just piled on that to that loss against the Bengals. Now then, want to talk about our guy Dennis Allen, and I mentioned this uh, a little while back, and there's people out there wanting to already put the bags back on. If you're going to do that, you better put an eye patch on as well, because like I said, he's nothing short of being they're very Raiderish. They're very Raiderish. That they just can't seem to seal these games. Like pretty much every one of these games that they have lost, it just seems like they're in it. They just can't seem to win these games. They seem like they seem like the Pelicans before they got their head coach. They just can't seem to close out games. They seem very similar to the Pelicans. They can't close out these games. They'll lead the entire game. Well, really, they hadn't done that until last week. But even in the second half, uh, second half, even in the fourth quarter, they'll have the lead or they'll be tied, and then they choke it away, and that's just terrible. And it's the turnovers, the penalties, and it's very similar to how the Pelicans play a lot of times before they got the new head coach, and it's just it, it's just one of the worst things I've ever seen is Dennis Allen, and it's weird how he's a defensive head coach, but now that he's the head coach, the defense has just gone down the drain with how they were playing when he was just a coordinator. It's as if he can't focus on just the defense anymore. It's just very odd how they aren't as good as they were when he was just the defensive coordinator, and I just don't know what happened there, and if he can't at least have the defense playing up to snuff, I don't know what the point of having him here is, because he's definitely not been anything worth having here for the offense until these last two games, and I would probably leave that up to Pete Carmichael, and I don't think Pete Carmichael's really anything to write home about either. But I can't really blame that too much on him either, because they don't really have a quarterback, and all their offensive weapons, for the most part, all three of their starting wide receivers have been hurt. But for the most part, Dennis Allen has had everything to work with on defense. But it's just the penalties, the the turnovers, the choking away leads. I will give them credit for the game on Sunday. This is the first game that they didn't have a turnover. That's another thing that's sickening about this game is they didn't have they didn't have a ton of penalties, and they didn't have a turnover in this game, and they still didn't win this game. But Dennis Allen, I've gone quickly from I wasn't really in favor of this hire to begin with, but I've gone quickly from giving him a little bit of a chance to saying, well, he had a history of a losing record as a Raider head coach, to saying, well, nothing's really changed now that he's the Saints head coach. So history's pretty much repeating itself now that he's the Saints head coach. So I'm not someone that's giving him a very long leash, but I just, like I said, I feel like I should just put on the eye patch. But on to the hot take and the score here. My hot take was that I thought Trey Hendrickson was going to have 2 sacks in this game, and he didn't have the 2 sacks, but there were two instances where he almost got to Andy Dalton and forced a fumble, and one of those was at the end of the game, the last drive there. He almost forced a fumble. I'm trying to think that was on. Trying to think if that was their drive when they were trying to run out the clock, or if that was on their 2-minute drive. Anyways, there's 2 situations where he almost forced a fumble, got there just at the last second, but he didn't get the 2 sacks, so my hot take didn't hit. And then on my score prediction, it was 31 to 24. So my score prediction was just about 3 points off, because the final score ended up being 30 to 26. So I was very close, and it's just frustrating because it really, like I said, it's just been saying it over and over, because they shouldn't have even been like that. It should have been flipped around and they should have won. But anyways, that's just, this entire podcast has just been a painful rant. And with that, I think that's all I have for you. And I guess I still have a hoot at for you. And with that, can I get a check, please?